In one of my last videos, I talked about kind of thinking about how to reduce your overall burnout and start to plan for the future and kind of have it shift your mindset and feel a little bit more hopeful for the future as far as your therapy career. And so the last video, one of the last videos I made kind of talked about like my 5 kind of like how to start to think about this and how to start to plan this. And the 5th step was to get your license as quickly as possible. And the reason that I say that is because I really believe that the way for therapists, clinicians to start to think about a healthier work-life balance for the future is to really strongly consider private practice. It was kind of life-changing for me overall for every reason, and we're going to kind of get into that. So there are lots and lots of different ways as therapists to make money and shift your career and change your mindset and have a kind of a better work-life balance. But this is what I would say would be my kind of top choice. And this is, it takes some work. So I know that I would say when I first started or made this jump or this shift, I was definitely extremely nervous, extremely worried. I was wondering if I could do it. I was wondering if I'd be able to make a good amount of pay. I was wondering kind of how things would pan out for me. And it did definitely make me a little bit nervous. So that is a normal feeling and a normal concern. But I'd say that it really, really opens the door up on so many different levels. So before I get into kind of the benefits of thinking about private practice, I want to say first that there are kind of some things that I wish I knew prior to starting. So when I had gone into private practice and started my own company, just from a business perspective, I actually had been moved to a different state and didn't really have my feet wet as far as making colleagues and kind of getting to know the space, know the state, know the laws, know the resources, etc. So I would just say that if you're starting out and you're kind of thinking about planning your goals for the future and you are kind of open to the option of private practice, I would say first get your feet really wet, especially if you're fresh, if you just went to school. Let's say you went to school in a different place that you're going to be living and working. I would say first join a practice, first get into the space, work for some organization, some community mental health practice, an outpatient clinic. Just really get your feet wet in that space, in that town, in that city, in that arena, so that you can start to meet people in the field, meet other therapists, get to know the space, get to know your resources, get to know kind of the dynamics in that area. Because I've now practiced in, I think, 4 different states since I became licensed. So things change place to place, even the laws change. So just be kind of, that would be like my first like regret is, first get your feet wet, get a job, kind of connect with people and get your feet wet in that arena. The other thing I would say is that if you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I would say that you don't have to worry about thinking, how am I going to bring in clients from nothing right off the bat. So one thing that I did that I found to be extremely helpful was to start as a 1099 contractor with another private practice to get a feel for private practice. So I did that for a couple of years, where I kind of started to get my feet wet in the world of private practice. So learning about other clinicians, learning about how they run their ship, kind of getting an idea of what's different between working for an agency versus private practice, starting to learn the business aspect of everything. And one thing that was really great about doing that is that I could start to set my business up on the side, as well as get my feet wet in private practice. And that's a really great option for some people. So don't think you have to sort of do this on your own. You can actually work for private practice. It just depends on your state laws, but you can work for a private practice and just do that forever. You don't actually need to do it alone ever if you don't want to. So, and that's a really good option. And I would say, just to summarize why private practice, first and foremost, I'd say it's because with private practice, usually you can have far more flexible hours. You can make your own hours in your job and decide what hours of the day that you would prefer to work. And that could be morning hours, that could be afternoon hours, that could be evening hours, that could be whatever you want it to be. And even if you have another full-time job you're kind of nervous to let go of because of your salary, your steady salary and things like that, private practice is again one of those things that you could do on the side. You could do a few hours a week, 1 or 2 hours a week, where you start getting your feet wet and getting kind of a little bit more comfortable in the space, and feeling like, building your confidence in that arena that you can do that. So flexible hours. The second thing is higher pay. So once you get licensed in whatever state that you practice in, or that you want to practice in, one of the benefits to doing that is that you can now open a private practice. So when you do that, typically in private practice, you can actually charge a significant amount more than when you were in grad school. So, or when you were post-grad school. So I'll give you an example. When I was in school, I was interning, so I didn't make any money, $0. And then when I graduated, I was able to get into an outpatient and do in-home therapy, and I was getting paid roughly between $19 to $25 an hour, just depending on kind of the work that I was doing. So that was kind of a little bit of a step up. And then when I got licensed, that bumped up a little bit more to about 30 to 35. When I moved to a new state, I started working in private practice, and that bumped up to $50 to $60 an hour, and that was working for somebody else. So again, it's just nice to know that you can actually bump your hourly up. And then in the future, again, once you're working kind of for yourself and making your own hours, you in your own practice can determine what your fees are just based on what does the market look like in your local area. So in my market, in my local area, the average LMHC is charging roughly between $100 to $150 per hour per session. So again, a huge increase. So if you think about it, it's more pay, and then you can sort of drop the hours, so you don't have to work as much. It's not as excessive. Now, that's going to depend highly on whether or not you decide to take insurance in private practice. The place that I like to that's totally your preference as a therapist, what you want to do. But my preference is to really strongly think about the pros and cons for fee-for-service versus taking insurance. Some people feel morally kind of connected to the idea of being able to provide services to more people, which is great. But you really have to think about, again, work-life balance. What are your goals? And if you want to accomplish those goals, how are you going to get there? There's a market for everybody. There's always going to be therapists that can provide those services. And that's why getting your feet wet in a certain market is really important, so you know what your resources are. So if you can't actually provide a service to somebody, that you at least have 1, 2, 3 people that you can refer to, which is really, really great, because it just feels good when you can, if you can't do something, that you can find somebody for somebody else. So my preference is fee-for-service, and that's not just because it's a little less work, but also because of the fact that the insurance world is so difficult and so complicated these days, and even getting on insurance panels is a very, very long process. So depending on your timeline, depending on what your morals, your values are, depending on what you are striving to accomplish, if you want to do a little bit of both, your choice. But those are just kind of my thoughts. Just be thinking about all of these things, and always go back to your goals that you've already identified, and figure out, how can I attain those goals? What am I going to need to do to attain those goals? So higher pay, flexible hours, and you can simultaneously have a job while building your practice at the same exact time. And I recommend you getting a private practice job just to start to get a feel for what that practice looks like. And you might even decide that you don't even want to do it on your own anymore, because you're just comfortable being in this group practice. You like the clinicians you're working with. It's a good flow. You don't really feel like you need to make any more money, and you like your hours, so you just kind of stay on board. So it's a win-win, whether or not you decide to go in one direction or another. But again, those are kind of my those are the reasons why I highly, highly advocate and recommend that clinicians really think about private practice as a solution to just having a better work-life balance. My hours have shifted significantly, and then when I became a mom, even more so. And I just love the fact that I have so much flexibility and can make some of these decisions because of kind of the setup of private practice. So we'll get into more details later on, but hopefully that's helpful for you, and that's kind of the direction that I say. Just think about this, think about the concept of private practice, get your feet wet in a certain community so you can kind of get yourself situated and see what the dynamics are, see what the market looks like, see what is the need, see how, again, build your skills as a therapist. And so that's kind of the first step. And then thinking about how you can kind of start to build your private practice or join a private practice and sort of do those things simultaneously while maybe working part-time in another clinic or working for an agency or whatever. So you can kind of be flexible there. The next step that I'm going to say is something that I will start to talk about next is really, really, really spending time, and this is what I would say you should do while you're studying, while you're in grad school, while you're interning, while you're doing your postmaster's hours, or even when you're just before you even start the process of getting into private practice, is to start learning about business on all fronts. And we're going to talk about that more in another video. All right, hope this is helpful, and I'll catch you at the next video.